No trouble.
Sit closer. I can bring you up.
Right there?
Are you taking questions or just going to talk?
We're gonna, I'm gonna talk, and then I'm gonna do a little intro, and then Veronica's gonna talk, and then I'll do some more
I'm just
after
going to
that.
introduce you and sit down.
Yeah, I mean, as far as questions, that could be at the end. I was thinking when everybody, because we want to give Syed and Alan, so they can have, so we can have collective, group questions at the end.
Shabbat Shalom. Don't blow.
Oh,
Never blow into your microphone.
you never blow into a microphone?
You have to taste this cap.
Oh.
You should position yourself so you look like you're talking to each other. All right, Shabbat Shalom. I am starting. Joel, can I just start? I introduced me. Hi, I'm here. I'm good. Okay. Sorry. I spent nearly a little more than 2 decades working for a Yechi congregation, and when you start on time, you're already 5 minutes late. So I'm starting. Starting. Here I am. Yes. Zoom. Hello. Relax. You're on Zoom. Okay, good. All right, Shabbat Shalom. I was very grateful looking at the very complex Netivot Shalom, drash, and After-Kiddish Talk spreadsheets that in April, 2 things were open. An opportunity to share my experiences in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and also to give the drash for HIAS and JFCS East Bay. And also, there was an opportunity to talk after the Kiddush. And so I reached out to Robin Mencher, who's our member here and executive director, JFCS East Bay, and also to Allan Berkowitz, who has been very active, is an activist, and has been teaching us about activism, and also to Howard, who I met here in the shul, and kept checking in with him over almost every Kiddush lunch. How are things going in the immigration courts until he announced that he was no longer in those courts. And so that's the panel I put together for a conversation. We have Saeed. Can you say your last name for me so I get it right? Isan. No, he's going to come later because they're first. But thank you. Anyways, Saeed will follow Veronica and Howard. Veronica is a member of the board of JFCS East Bay. Saeed is a staff member of JFCS East Bay. They just met today. Veronica is an attorney with East Bay Sanctuary Covenant, where she supports refugees and immigrants going through the asylum process. She and Howard have worked out their chat. I'm looking forward to it. Then we'll welcome Saeed. We'll talk about his experiences as a refugee from Afghanistan. And then Alan is going to give us some opportunities for direct action. And then we'll have questions. How's that? So that everyone has a chance to speak. And so I have concluded all my speaking for today, except to say, if you didn't get one of these postcards, I hope they're still out there, or I hope they're not still out there. But if you want to get active with JFCS East Bay, you know how to use a website, and they have ample opportunities for doing good work and getting into good trouble.
Okay. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. And so in trying to think about how we're going to do this, I know that you all probably been reading the news and then following what's been going on in general. And Peretz gave his account of things. And so I see this as more of a macro level. And so I just wanted to present a little bit of, we wanted to present things from a micro level. So I'm going to be, and Veronica's going to be focusing on experiences in the immigration court. And then Syed's going to be talking about his own experience as well. And so in general, in most of the type of relief you hear about is asylum. So this is refugee, so Shabbat. And there are different ways that people get this status. There are people who enter the United States in the status of a refugee. There are those who are paroled into the United States in some humanitarian parole and then apply for a refugee or green card status. And then there are people who are either enter illegally or come here on a tourist visa and then apply for asylum with the Department of Homeland Security in the asylum office. And then there are those who end up in immigration court where they have an opportunity to apply for asylum there. There are other types of relief in immigration court, but asylum is the one that we see the most. So first, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview of just sort of the framework of immigration court. And then Veronica is going to be talking about things from that of the defense attorney who represents people in court. So people get into immigration court because they come to the attention of the Department of Homeland Security. And the Department of Homeland Security is the prosecuting body, and then they prepare and file a charging document with the immigration court, which the immigration court is part of the Executive Office for Immigration Review, which is a sub-agency of the Department of Justice. People could either be detained or non-detained. I had a docket that was completely non-detained. There are detainee dockets and detainee courts, and people, one of the first things that they try to do there is try to get out on some sort of immigration bond. Some are eligible for it, some aren't. And okay, yeah, I got the, I was getting the message here that I wasn't speaking into the mic. But in any case, once you get into immigration court, at least from what I was doing, is there are two things that the immigration court.
And also, if you don't want to hold it, you can just stand near this. Try that.
All right.
You don't have to get that close to it. Just talk
okay.
and see if that's better.
Okay.
Is that better?
And why don't we do both, just in case? So, in immigration court, the first thing that the judge has to determine is whether or not he or she has jurisdiction over that person. That's to find this person removable and subject to being deported from the United States. After that's determined, then comes the second part, which is an application for relief. So in the when the person would come to the initial master calendar, this is a preliminary type hearing, and I would give advisals as to their rights and obligations. Rights includes right to an attorney, among other things, right to present evidence on their behalf, to challenge any evidence that's submitted to them, and obligation of informing the court of any address changes, and of course the consequences of a failure to appear, which could be an in absentia removal order if they don't show up. So for the first, and then we give them time to get an attorney. At the first hearing, we try to see what kind of, if they're afraid to return to their countries. So if that's the case, we give them asylum applications. Some may have already applied before they even came into court. And then we have them come back for another preliminary hearing. And after that, we set them out for a final hearing, and then we determine, and we also have a determination as to whether or not they're removable. And then at some point, as I said, they have their final hearing, and most people by then have an attorney. At least initially, most people in my courtroom did not have an attorney, but eventually most people did. And then they would have the hearing, and the judge makes a determination. The person is granted relief, and the government does not appeal. Fine, that's a final order, being able to stay here. If they do not win before the court, then they have opportunities to appeal. And even if they do win, the government has the right to an appeal. And this appeal from the judge's decision would go to something called the Board of Immigration Appeals, which is an appellate tribunal in the Executive Office for Immigration Review. If at the Board of Immigration Appeals, the applicant and it does not win there, then they have an opportunity to go to the Federal Court of Appeals, and here is the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And so that's basically the structure that people are working in. So now I'm going to hand this over to Veronica, and then she's going to talk about things from her angle.
Hi, everyone. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay. Before I start, I'm so sorry, Howard, but I'm going to fangirl you. But Howard was an amazing judge. His approval rating for court was 86%, which is really high. Considering that, I think countrywide, we're at like below 40%, or even lower. I was going over the stats with my director, and there was one place that had 0% approval ratings on asylum. And that person saw like 200 cases. I'm like, how is that possible? But I had the honor of being in front of him one time. He was amazing. And now we have 2 judges left in San Francisco, and I think they're at about lower than 50%. That's how far our immigration court system has crashed. So I'm going to give you the perspective of 2 different things. Not only am I a practicing attorney at East Bay Sanctuary Covenant, which is a nonprofit, and I do asylum cases. We just started our removal defense there this past year, also in response of what's been happening. And my main, what I always wanted to practice is removal defense, is what I did privately. And I'm also an immigrant myself. So I've been through the immigration court system, not in the asylum context, but in a different context. So it's one of the reasons why I went into immigration work. So I came here from Mexico when I was 4 years old, and I grew up in the Bay Area, specifically Richmond. That's where I lived most of my life. Spent 5 years in Colorado, but eventually came back to the Bay Area as well. And when I was about 16 years old, I was in high school, and I was taking a class, and there was an attorney that came to speak to the class about what they did, how you get into it, and all that. And the teacher knew that I wanted to be an attorney, and so she asked the attorney to talk to me. And so we had a conversation, and he said, you should come work for me as a file clerk. And I'm like, no, I can't. And he kept insisting. And I finally told him the secret my mother told us never to say. We were undocumented. We were able to enter legally, but after that, our visas expired and we had no way of being able to qualify for any benefits. So we had been here undocumented for 12 years. And so I remember going home, telling her that. I was sobbing, and she's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And the attorney couldn't believe that we had been here so long without any documentation. So then he called in a favor from a friend who actually, her husband was the director of East Bay Sanctuary Covenant. And so after talking, it looks like, our family qualified for something called cancellation of removal. That means you have to have a qualifying relative. So you have to have either a spouse, a child, or a parent who is a U.S. citizen and who will suffer extreme and extraordinary hardship. They actually, new BIA rule just came out to what extraordinary hardship means. So before it was like, the kid was failing, they were failing at school, or they were having a hard time adjusting. And every time I think a judge hears a new case, that standard keeps going up. And so the thing is that they don't tell you about is, so you have to have been here 10 years or longer too, and had a qualifying relatives. The things most people don't know is that you have to be in removal proceedings. So it means you have to be in court, you have to be in front of a judge. So we weren't in removal proceedings. And when people ask me about this, I never suggest anybody to put themselves in removal proceedings to be able to qualify for this, because the chance of getting this approved is really low. I always tell people out of 10 cases, one of them is going to win. And so it's hard. My parents made a difficult decision and they decided to put themselves in removal proceedings. How did that go? Sadly, back in that time, they tried calling ICE, but that didn't work. And so then they applied for asylum, knowing that they most likely wouldn't qualify. And so they got this other attorney, helped them apply for asylum. Of course, the attorney was like, yeah, I'm going to get you asylum. Wasn't true, but they knew it. But sadly, there was so many other people there waiting, thinking that what that attorney was telling them was the truth. They applied, they got denied and referred to court. And then that's when the other attorney who was doing the favor came into play, because she took the case, because she's like, I can't put you in proceedings either. That's not something I'm going to do. So we went into proceedings when I was 16 years old. We spent 5 years waiting for a court date. I think 2 or 3 other times we would go and it would get rescheduled or canceled for whatever reason. And then I hadn't told Howard this, but I just remembered as I was thinking my story, I think a few days before we went to our actual court date, I remember telling my mom, crying. I was like, we should just go. I was like, there's no point in being here. I'm like, why do we want to stay in a country that doesn't want us here? And she was like, no, your life's going to be better here. Things are going to be better for you here than they are in Mexico. And she's like, you have to keep fighting. And then I was like, okay. I was like, but I told my mom, if this doesn't work, we're leaving. I'm leaving, because I was 21 at the time. And so we went to court. My parents went first. So for context, I had 2 U.S. citizen sisters, one that was 16 and one that was about 3 or 4. The judge said the 3 or 4 one didn't count. They're like, she can go to Mexico and she will adjust to life there. So it was only based on the 16-year-old one. So my parents needed to prove that if they were deported and she was to remain in the United States, that she would suffer extreme and extraordinary hardship, or even if she were to go back, that she would suffer extreme and extraordinary hardship. So my parents had their case, and they got approved. We're great. The other thing that I didn't learn until much later when I became an immigration attorney is my sister and I had aged out. So remember I said a qualifying relative is a spouse, a child, or a parent? I was neither the spouse, child, or parent of my 16-year-old sister. We were being qualified under my parents because they had derivatives, which means minor children. But you age out at 18. And there's no law that freezes your age like asylum. When you apply for asylum, if you have kids that are under the age of 21, let's say by the time you get your case heard at the asylum office or at court, the kid is 25, it doesn't matter. The age gets frozen the moment you apply, that they receive that application. It doesn't work like that for cancellation of removal. So we had a separate court date. There was a court date for me and my other sister. So I had another one too. She was 2 years younger than me. So she was 18 and I was 21. We went to court, presented an entire case. And then the ICE attorney said, we're going to let them stay. We're not going to deport them. And the judge was stunned. And this was a judge that at the time was a terrible judge and had a very low approval rating. He went to the back. He's like, hold on, I need to go check something out. Went to the back, came back out, like 5 minutes later and said, since DHS isn't fighting this, since ICE isn't fighting this, there's something I can do. So yes, you can stay. And yeah, it was a miracle. I found that out later after I graduated law school, I went to find out the attorney who represented us. She became my mentor until she retired. And she was like, yeah, you guys didn't qualify. I'm like, why didn't you tell us that? And she's like, I wasn't going to worry you guys, and we were going to see where this goes. And so that is the reason why I became an immigration attorney, specifically representing clients in court. And it's been a difficult journey in the sense that it feels like I've been seeing it destroyed from the inside. And sometimes it feels like I don't have there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just there to witness the dismantling of this system. And so one of the things that I can relate to clients when I speak to them is like, hey, I've been through the system, so I kind of understand. I don't truly understand the asylum part, which has its own hardships, because if they're fleeing for asylum, means they've been persecuted based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or a particular social group. And so that in itself, it's hard. And then to go through this entire system that now is completely working against you is devastating. And so I've been fortunate in the sense that I was able to get through it. I'm on the other side. This is what I do for a living. I'm very passionate about it. And it's been very hard. Like the first Trump era, I almost quit. I was like, I'm done with this. And now we're in the second Trump era, which is 10 times worse than the first one. And I'm not gonna say I haven't thought about it, about leaving and going to do something else, but I also know that this is the only way that some people will be able to qualify for something. If you have someone fighting for you. I always tell my clients when they come to me, I'm like, hey, you have two options. You can leave voluntarily or you can stay and fight. And I tell them I will fight as hard and as long as you want me to, but I also don't blame you if you also want to go ahead and go. And so like Howard said, the way it starts is for court, you've been detained. So you usually either get detained at the border or you're in here and you have some interaction with the police and then they call ICE. And so then you get detained, put in proceedings. You get the first one. First one's a master where you agree to the charging document and then determine what your form of relief is. And then after that, there's one more hearing. That's the individual hearing. That's where you tell your entire story, what happened. Usually your word is good enough, but now you have to get more. So we usually get them to get letters from anybody who you've ever told the story to or anybody who's ever been there, experienced anything or saw anything in order to prove that that's what happened. And what's happening now with the court system is that they're making it harder. It's supposed to be a neutral system, ideally, the judges are. And ideally, the system too, there's supposed to be rules in place, and then you just follow them, and that should be enough, but that hasn't been enough. And there's been recent articles of judges who've been fired that have said, they told us that we need to start deporting more people. And I think it even said that the job listing is now deportation judge. Let's not even give these people an opportunity. And that's what's been really hard to see as someone who's been through the system, as someone who's working to fight for the clients, is that this is what we're seeing now, and it doesn't seem fair anymore. And so our hope is just things change now, or what we did last term, wait it out, and then hope that we get a Democratic president that puts everything back to the way it was and gives people the opportunity to continue to fight.
So just wanted to sort of add when, what goes on in court when a person is putting on his or her case, and I'll just focus on asylum. So at the beginning of the hearing, I asked the parties, so it's the attorneys representing ICE and the private bar attorneys, to see if they could narrow some issues. And the issues with regard to asylum, it's the threshold issue is credibility, because if the person's not credible, you can have the world's greatest story, but you got nothing. And then going into the substance of the law, having to do with was there past harm rise to the level of persecution? There's a body of law that talks about what is and is not persecution. Was it on account of a
particular protected group that Veronica mentioned. And also, was it by the government or was it by a part of society that the government was either unable or unwilling to control? And then, so then you try to see if you can narrow any issues. Sometimes you're able to narrow issues, sometimes not, and that would determine the length of the hearing. So then the applicant in these proceedings is called a respondent. So then the respondent's attorney would take him or her through direct examination, and then after that, the government attorney would do cross-examination, and then the respondent's attorney would have an opportunity for redirect. And if I had any questions, then I could ask questions of the applicant. And in immigration court proceedings, the judge has a more inquisitorial role than it perhaps in a state or federal court. There are times when the applicant is not represented. I remember having, thankfully, only one such case, and it was basically the government attorney and I who did all the questioning, but the applicant, the respondent, was educated, and she did a very good job of preparing her case when they was able to get a grant. In looking at issues of credibility, we're looking at whether or not there's internal consistency in the testimony. People always have to put together a declaration beforehand, and we look for consistency with that, and we look at consistency with whatever supporting documentation. With any of the testimony, person could bring in other witnesses who were there. We will look for consistency with that. We look for plausibility. We look if there were any omissions. Did person omit something in a declaration and then, lo and behold, mention something that is of significance for the first time during testimony? And so then after that, at the end of the hearing, I would always have a conversation, sometimes oral argument, but usually a conversation. And I'm interested in a conversation with the government attorney because I want to see where are we going in this. And then at the end of the hearing, I would make determination as to credibility, and then make a decision on the case. Sometimes it was a decision on the day of the hearing itself. Other times would have to be set for either an oral or written decision later on. If it was a particularly complex case, I would give the parties opportunity to do any written closings. So that is, let's see, is there anything else? No, I think that's pretty, and as far as the quality of representation, it varied, just like in any place. So that is basically, oh yeah, there is one other thing. And people do talk about the high grant rates of judges in San Francisco. And it really has to do with, it takes three to tango in these proceedings. And in the previous administration, we had a more open group of policies from the Department of Homeland Security. There would be times where the government did not have any issues with the case. And I asked, well, if I were to grant on X basis, would you reserve appeal? And they say no, so I could take care of it right away. There was times in the previous administration where we would get a statement of non-appearance in which the government would state its position on the case, and they said they expected the judge would still have a hearing despite the fact that no one from the government was showing up. And they said at the end, if the government If the judge grants the case, the Department of Homeland Security will waive appeal. So, and at the same time, so you're looking at the culture of the particular prosecuting body in a particular city. And you're also looking at the case law of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. So all that probably resulted in a higher grant rate, certainly within San Francisco. And San Francisco was known to have one of the highest grant rates in the country. And anyway, in the first year after the Trump administration, 13 of my colleagues were fired. But I retired.
You
So, but we, yeah, but we will entertain questions at the end, and I should give, next we should hand this over to Syed, and then after that to Alan.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sayed. I work for the Refugees Department at Jewish Family and Community Services for the last 3 years. An immigrant from Afghanistan, where I served by the Jewish Family and Community Services, resettled in East Bay, and later on become one of the staff member of the organization. So being a refugee, it's not a choice. It's the result of difficulties that no one has to choose. I would find myself lucky, landed in East Bay, where I welcomed with warm hands and with the support that I receive. The belief that we have in Jewish Family and Community Services, which is welcoming the stranger, is the good example standing here. I had no contact. I did not have the opportunity. I did not know where to go, because after the US withdraw the troops from Afghanistan, I worked for the US Embassy diplomatic missions in Kabul. My family and I were a direct target. So we were told to leave the house 48 hours before and reach to the airport. And I'm sure everybody among you have watched those scenes where there was so much rush on those aircraft, and everyone was willing to leave the country because of the fear and persecutions by the opposites, which currently are the Taliban. We were able to, my wife and my son, who used to be 3 years at that time, we were able to find a way to the airport. And we got into the aircraft and we found ourselves in one of the military military base in Netherlands, which we did not even knew that Netherlands, a country in the Europe, would have welcomed us. We did not know 48 hours before where we are going, but we wanted to leave the country because of our connections and affiliations with the US government. We lived there for 11 months in a refugee welcome center. And finally, we got the opportunity to come to the United States and find ourselves in East Bay, Concord. We were welcomed by one of the Jewish Family and Community Services staff at the airport, and we were directed to temporary housing, which was one of the housing given by one of the Jewish family and community services volunteers. We got the hot meal on the first night, and we got suitable clothing, and we started from there. And that was because of the great work that Jewish family and community services did for the refugees over there. I was connected with, my family was connected with the medical resources. We were connected with the legal services, our Jewish family and community services here. And we got an opportunity to work on our apply for case adjustment because of the immigration case that my family and I had. For 90 days, we got case management to resettle in East Bay. And within 90 days, we were able to become self-sufficient. We got to know who our doctor is. It's because of the refugees, because of the JFCS. We got to know where my wife go to adult education. It's because of the Jewish Family and Community Service in East Bay. We got to know where to apply for jobs. We got to know where to connect with the community. And we got to know the cultural orientations of living in East Bay. It's all because of the Jewish Family and Community Services. And within that period, I got the opportunity to apply for one of the role. And I became one of the staff member of the Jewish Family and Community Services. What JFCS in East Bay did for my family, I became in a role to do that for the newcomers. So, and that was the motive that I wanted to pay back to the community. And we started from there. In our department, we have served over 2,000 newly arrived, mainly from Afghanistan, Ukraine, and 15 other countries. And we welcome them, we support them, and we work on them. We have a number of programs supporting these families. Families who need extensive services, we support them beyond 90 days. There are a number of programs that our volunteers from the Jewish community helping with these families. And I'm sure there might be examples of among there that they have helped with the refugees' families throughout their journey here. And that is, again, welcoming the stranger. That an example, myself and my family, currently, my wife, she is going to adult school. My son is in grade 3. We are self-sufficient. This is the example of those struggles in that support that we have received in the first 90 days. And that is the fortunate part that anybody who has been served by the JFCS in East Bay, they have received such support. And now, at the first that they were in need, now majority of them are there to support the families. With the support of the JFCS East Bay, families are connected with the public benefits like medical assistance, enroll them in ESL classes, help them with relevant jobs, refer them to trainings. So school-age kids are enrolled in the schools. All clients, all families that they are coming, they have received cultural orientation to know exactly the values of the American societies. We have programs that support beyond 90 days. And that is number of programs. We have programs that is focusing on mental health well-beings of these families. In our JFCS East Bay, one of the program is the legal services department. When these families come, they are connected with the legal resources. And today, what we, the two colleagues were talking about, those are like, these families are receiving such supports to make sure that they are ready and prepared for such interviews throughout their journey. So what I'm concluding, that what I have started with, like being a refugee is not choice, but rebuilding a life with courage and resilience it is. And that is with the help of Jewish Family and Community Services. My family and hundreds of other families receive that support, and they start the new life in the East Bay. So I just wanted to thank them and thank you for the opportunity that I got the opportunity to speak and share about myself and the success I have received throughout my journey.
Thank you. I want to tell you about a project that has coalesced from a group of folks here at Netivot Shalom. But as a lead into it, I want to share with you a frustration that I experience, and I think many of us, maybe all of us, and the epiphany that I had. For a long time, I struggled to figure out, what is this moment calling on me to do? I mean, attending protests, it inspires us. It reminds us that there are other good people out there. It has zero impact, real impact on people who are suffering. And I came to understand there's nothing I can do to change national policy. I can't get rid of this authoritarian regime of hate. I can't change border and immigration policy. And then I had an epiphany. I can't do any of that, but I can impact real people suffering in my community. And that, as soon as I understood that, everything changed for me. So I learned along the way that immigrant families right now are suffering in the ways we know, and in some ways that you maybe haven't thought about. So if an immigrant leaves for work in the morning and gets kidnapped by ICE, that household literally immediately that day is now food insecure, financially insecure. There are churches, I know this from a priest colleague, there are churches that are organizing networks in their church. Who's going to watch their kids if they're disappeared? There are immigrant households, they're afraid to leave their house lest they get picked up. And so you've heard references to good folks in the community escorting their kids to and from school. There are immigrants who are afraid to go to the market lest the flock cameras that you read about, and if you want to know more about that, talk to me at a different time. I'm involved in the fight to turn off flock cameras. If an immigrant drives to the market and a camera picks up their license plate, they're afraid that they're going to get disappeared. So Faith in Action East Bay, a social justice centered community organizing nonprofit that some of you know I worked for. I was the COO until I retired a year and a half ago. They are supporting immigrant households who are food insecure. And they put out the call for communities to create food pods. And I thought this was a perfect way for folks to have immediate, direct impact on our neighbors who are suffering. Can't change national policy, can impact folks who are neighbors. So I sent an email to a bunch of you, people who I just knew and gotten to know here at Netivot Shalom in the short time that Mindy and I have been members, people who I know to care about these things. And I said, here's an idea, what do you think? And we self-organized. We had a Zoom meeting, and it was well attended. It went a little bit viral because some folks told their friends at Or Zarua, and then a bunch of Or Zarua folks said, we want to be involved, and they're likely forming a second food pod. Here's how it works. We're now going on about 2 months. There are about 12 of us actively involved. We made the commitment to provide bags of food on a weekly basis to 2 immigrant households to start with. Over time, if we get more folks, we can expand to more, but we made the commitment to support 2 households. And our food pod members in teams, 2 a week, they go shopping and they prepare the parcels. Till actually yesterday, the delivery arrangement was they bring these, they were bringing the food bags here to the synagogue, and a vetted volunteer from Faith in Action East Bay would come by, has been coming by to pick it up and deliver it to the 2 households. Starting next week or the week after, we're going to have some of our folks vetted and start making the delivery directly. So we have our participants, they go shopping, they will be involved in delivery. And again, it's direct impact. And so I say to you, if this is something that interests you, join us. If we get X, I haven't figured out the metric, but it's not a lot. And it's a really easy volunteer gig, because if we've got 6 people, we've got 12 people, okay, we send 2 shopping at a time together, once every 6 weeks, okay, it becomes your turn. So if this is something that speaks to you, we invite you to join us. And again, at some point soon, I'm hoping that we're going to take on a 3rd household, maybe even a 4th household. If this is something that you would like to support, whether you participate or not, please talk to me. At the moment, I'm hoping it will change very soon, maybe as quickly as this week. But at the moment, this is not an official project recognized by the synagogue. And the synagogue, you can't make your donations to the synagogue. There's politics and bureaucracy. We're trying to work it out. Okay, so we kind of self-organize ourselves. But if this is something you'd like to support, please speak to me. And I would love and I would hope that we could get tons of us involved in the work of directly supporting folks who are suffering. And again, we can't change national policy. We can through an election, but we can help our neighbors in our community. And this is one, the Immigrant Support Food Pod is one such effort to alleviate a little bit of the pain and burden of folks who are suffering right here.
So we're going to take questions. The questions could be addressed to anyone who spoke this afternoon, and we'll start. Hi. Wait, Joel's handing you a microphone.
Sorry. This is for Rabbi Berkowitz. How do you know what foods a particular family would like?
I'll take that. I'm one of the members of the food pod, and right now we're doing just staples. As we get to know the families better, we're going to get more specific lists, but right now it's things like flour and sugar and detergent and toilet paper and paper towels, and so we have and Cheerios and a treat for children and beans and rice and things like that. So we have a whole list of things that we get. And like Min and I went shopping this week. So we went to grocery outlet in Richmond, and we each take a cart, and it's a lot of fun.
All right, other questions? That was a practical question. Joan.
This is a question for Saeed. We have all read that the refugee program for Afghanistans who have helped Americans is being dismantled, and I'm wondering if that has directly affected our East Bay community.
Yes. In December there was an incident in DC that has halted the immigration processes for Afghan nationals, and it has affected the families. I might be example of that. I was in the process of almost receiving a permanent residency, and it is nowhere. We don't know how it will happen, but colleagues were talking about the fairness, the fair of HIAS with families. It has been increasing day by day, especially about the Afghan communities, because there has been a process that each family was going through a process to make sure that they get a lawful permanent residency, and people were in different stages. Somebody like waiting for an interview, somebody just to wait for the green card, somebody just to do the biometrics. And for Afghans, it's paused. And it has affected the families, because we are working with so many families, and we see that their cases has been halted. We still hope things will change, but for the time, there is no progress toward that.
You may have heard on the PBS NewsHour that there is an idea floating in the State Department to Afghans who are sitting in army bases across the world to send them to the Congo. This is actually a real idea that's happening right now. Mindy.
Yeah, hi. What many of you don't know is that before we came up here, I was the CEO of Jewish Family Services of Silicon Valley, and our refugee resettlement program was one of the most important things that we did. And one of the last things that we were focused on before I left 3 years ago, before I retired, was resettling families from Afghanistan. And what you should all know, as Saeed was very humble in pointing out, but these specifically, the people who are resettled from Afghanistan tend to be the ones who helped out American soldiers. These were translators. These were people who helped our country during this. And by not supporting the Afghan community, it's a crime. They were helping us, and we were helping them. And we need to stay in partnership and to be together through this very difficult time, with the hope that the next president who comes in realizes that we need to, again, continue the program. And for those Afghan families who want to stay, give them the path they need to citizenship. Because truly, they deserve our attention and support.
Thank you. Okay, make it easy on Joel this time.
I'd like to ask Veronica a question. When you actually manage to get permission to stay for whatever the status is, at what point can you become a citizen? And who was the government when you were doing that big thing? Clearly, it wasn't under Trump.
It was not under Trump. It was 2004, I believe. Maybe remember who was president back then? Bush. Well, it was Bush. So it depends. Like when you get asylum, you're here for, once you get approved asylum, then you are here 1 whole year with the asylum. And then once you've been here for a year, then you can apply for residency. And then once you apply for residency, it's usually 5 years, but they count 1 year of asylum. So technically it's 4 years of residency. And then after that, you can apply for citizenship. So a lot of what people don't know either is there's a lot of bars to asylum. Like you have to apply within within 1 year that you enter. If you don't apply, you don't qualify. We usually can qualify exceptions, trauma. People come here, they're traumatized. Not knowing about asylum doesn't count. So it has to be like you were so traumatized from what happened in your home country. There's no way you could have talked about it the year that you were here. For that, we have to hire psychologists. They have to do psychological reports. They have to testify. There's other bars too. And then, so the thing is, there's something called withholding. It means you qualify for asylum for everything except you're barred for a reason. So with that one, you can never become a U.S. resident and you can never become a citizen. So you can stay here legally, you can work here legally, you can travel within the United States, you can't ever leave the United States. So there are a lot of people in that status because there's all these bars that got put in place because I think the 1 year bar didn't come into, I want to say the 90s. 80s, 90s?
No, 1 year bar.
Yeah.
The requirement to apply for asylum within 1 year of entering the United States came in with the Immigration Act that was on September 30, what they call IRA. I never remember, it's the Immigrant Responsibility, whatever lengthy name, but that was passed on September 30th of 1996 and then went into effect on April 1st, 1997. So,
But before then, it didn't matter when you applied.
yeah, it would only just go to the issue of credibility.
Yeah.
But other than,
And now it's one of the hardest things to overcome. So I recently had a case in court and she was trans and she suffered a lot. And a lot of it was like underage. So she came before she was 18. Without going into the specifics, there's just a lot of harm. And she got denied based on the 1 year bar. She had been here 10 years. But I had a psychologist ready to testify. I had the report. But I think the judge that I got, she's from San Diego. So she was from San Diego hearing cases in San Francisco remotely, which I think that's not fair. And basically DHS tried to say, well, she got a job and she had a house. But what they didn't let us present to, because they cut my time short, was she'd been homeless. She was in and out of like having being homeless and not, and there's just a lot of other stuff. And so she got denied based off of that. So she got withholding, but then DHS appealed it. And that's what they're doing. They're appealing everything. And so now they have to go to the BIA and then probably the Ninth Circuit. But it's just all this stuff that it's making it more and more difficult for people, all these barriers that are, that they're putting on for people to be able to qualify for asylum. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. When Veronica mentioned withholding of removal, it is basically the international law concept of non-refoulement, that you are not going to be returned to your country. You can stay here. However, if another country will take you, then you get to go to that country. And I think that the administration has been trying to do that, but generally before this administration, people get to stay here with a work permit.
Thanks. A quick comment and then a question for maybe Said or Veronica. I had the privilege last year of volunteering. I'm a retired lawyer to represent I guess what they call an affirmative asylum case. This is someone who wasn't being prosecuted. It was about a 45-year-old gay man from Honduras who had been here. And just to give people an indication of how broken the system is, his hearing, which I attended with him on, it was technically an interview with the immigration officer, was in October. It was 10 years to the month from the date of his application for asylum. It took him 10 years to get that hearing, and we still don't have the decision yet. Okay, from October. I mean, the system is so. My question is, it's my understanding that all the State Department grants, or a huge percentage of it, to JFCS and HIAS have been essentially terminated. Is that right? And I'm just and I'm just wondering if any new immigrant families have been admitted in the past year under the refugee program, or what the status of.
Yes, the programs through HIAS, JFCS was implementing. It has been terminated, but some of the funding has been carry over until September of this year. So that means September of this year, there will be no funding opportunities from state, federal through HIAS. But there are some programs from on the state levels. December 2025, like after that, we did receive families that they have received special immigrations visas. We did not receive any refugees or immigrants after December 2025, but there were some families that they arrived either in September, in November, or did they receive visas before that held, but they had the visas on their hands, and then they moved to the US, and we had some of the families that we work with them. The focus has been shifted in the refugee services since we do not have the new families arrival. We are focusing on extensive case management of those families that they have been served. Now we're working on those families and families that move from other states. They are also part of our programs now. So yeah, it's unfortunate. Like programs are about to end in September of this year. We don't know what's going to happen. We might lose a majority of the stuff because of the non-funding. But still there's hope. Let's hope for the best.
Maybe just a couple more questions. I think
This is for Howard, and it's just a simple question. How large was your docket? How many cases were you looking at and deciding at a time?
Well, the total number of my docket, and I had an aged docket, and they were all non-detained. I have to say that I have to say I never really asked how many I had on my docket, because it kind of didn't matter, because let's say there are 10,000. There's no way I'm going to get through those. even if I'd been here for a really long time. So, sorry, I can't answer that question, but I know I must have heard hundreds of cases, and there were a lot of cases that have been, there were some cases I had been hanging around for 7, 8, 9, 10 years, 11 years, things like that. And cases would be reset. I mean, for me to reset a case, well, let's say we didn't finish on a particular day and reset a case, I'd have to, because my calendar was so full until 2029, every time I have to reset a case, I'd have to kick off another case so that I wouldn't have to put the case out another 2 to 3 years before I had a second hearing. So it's just that the immigration courts has always been the stepchild. There's never been enough judges. There's just been a backlog forever. And so but I probably had thousands of cases. And I inherited the docket from judges who retired, were fired, whatever. So that's about the best I can say to answer your question.
And it's going to get worse because they're closing down 100 in Montgomery. So that one's closing down. That's May 1st. And there's only 2 judges left, like I said, and they're moving to 630 Sampson. I think Berkowitz is still going to hear cases remotely, technically 3. We have Concord, only 6 judges, and then we have Sacramento, I think 2 or 3. The San Francisco used to have 21 judges, and now we're down to 2. And so I'm guessing the longer wait. I'm guessing 10 years before. I mean, it might be good because it means we'll be out of the Trump era for a lot of these people. They just have to keep waiting. Yeah.
Yeah, my question is, I mean, the midterm elections are coming up, and is there anything that the voting population, those of us, is there anything that can be done to at least preserve the opportunities that exist now, or is everything just subject to an executive order that could shut down everything that's, for the moment, working even partially?
I think that we can get the House and the Senate. If we can get both the House and the Senate Congress, then they can do something to get him out. But that's probably going to be the only hope that we have. Because right now, like you said, he operates on executive orders that we all have, we follow. And so the only way it's going to be that. And it has to come from Congress because they're not listening to us. And so that's the only, that's what we're hoping for too. I'm hoping the midterm election will turn the House and the Senate. Both of them are both of them are Democratic, and then they can do something to get him out or make him accountable for the things he's doing. But I'm not so hopeful. A lot of it is just, we're just trying to buckle down and hold and wait for the storm to pass. But some of these people are losing out, and some of them, I don't do a lot of juvenile cases or children's cases anymore, especially after I have children. It's really hard for me. But I went for a friend, and this kid had an approved I-130. It means that he's approved for a special immigration juvenile status. So it's one of his parents was either had neglected or abused him. The state judge had determined he should not go back to his home country because there's nobody to take care of him there. He had no other form of relief. Usually I could admin close it, which means take it out of the active docket and put it away, or I can terminate because eventually he'll get a visa. The thing is, the visas are 5 years behind. And with all these new BIA rulings and everything, they're saying that's not good enough. But Congress never intended for these kids to go wait in their home country for the visa. Guess what? He got deported. He got a removal order. And that's the first time it happened. And after I was the judge, which was Berkowitz too. She asked me if I had anything else to say. I started crying because I couldn't help it. This is the first time I've ever cried in court. And I was just telling her that I said, I said, I object to your ruling. I said, this is atrocious. Congress never meant for this to happen to these children. They were meant to be here and be safe. And then when I was done, because I couldn't speak anymore, she's like, okay, end of day. And she closed it out. I told my client, I said, I'll get you help for someone to appeal for you. He left. I went around the corner and just sobbed for a solid 10 minutes. And I was, and I called my partner and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just there to watch everything get destroyed. And then the other one that I had, and this was, I did it for a friend too. She needed a representation. And I had to hold the hand of a 5-year-old and take her up myself because the mom had already had a removal order and she couldn't enter the building. And so I'm holding her little hand and we're going up and the mom is like, remember, listen to everything the lawyer says. And I go, and it was just really sad because I can't imagine having to send I have a 4-year-old with an attorney and be like, hopefully, you're okay. The judge gave us time to put in another motion, which I did, and that got approved. But that was right before the new laws kicked in where you can't terminate cases for such clients because she was also such client. So, I mean, I'm hoping with this midterm election that it changes. I mean, and I'm not asking like everything to go in our favor. I'm just asking things to be fair. That's it. I just want things to be fair and the rules to be followed. And things are not fair. Things are not being followed, and things are being stacked against people that have already coming and suffering a lot, and they're making it worse. Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, even though there are executive orders, the existence of immigration courts and removal proceedings with the proper procedures, that's all in the Immigration Act, part of the U.S. Code, and in regulation. So there is a framework that is there that doesn't exist at the whim of anyone. Those are in place because of acts of Congress. So it's not just going to go away just because of an executive order, because there is a legal framework for the permanent existence of these things. Just one other thing. The Board of Immigration Appeals has been, which issues precedential decisions that judges have to follow, have been coming out like at least once, sometimes twice a week ever since the Trump administration came in. Before that, the board would every so often issue precedential decisions, and a lot of them have just come out against the respondent and have limited the type of discretion that the judges have, for example, to take administrative closure that Veronica mentioned, or to dismiss case. They've been very much limiting what judges can do there. And so that is the situation at this moment.
Well, I just want to thank all of you for the work you're doing in this terrible time, and Alan for telling us how we can start to get involved. It's really sad, but it's good to know that people like you are still fighting and inspiring the rest of us to do what we can do. So thank you so much for coming here. I know it's hard to talk about this stuff. And for everyone for being here. And I'm sure that we'll continue to talk about this and figure out how we can be a Kehilat Kodesh, like you are calling us to do, Peretz. Shabbat Shalom.
I get it. That's what I say to my daughter. Keep the birth certificate. Thank you. Keep going. Be strong. So I
Yes. Thank you very much. Dover and you went to grad school, right? So, well, I taught at good. Yeah, very good. So I taught at Dover. Mostly I taught